Personal Finance Practice Problem using Excel. Financial Statement and Budget Part 3, Budget versus Actual. Prepare to get financially fit by practicing personal finance. Here we are in our Excel worksheet. If you have access to the Excel worksheet, would like to follow along, note that we're down here in the Practice tab as opposed to the Example tab. The Example tab, in essence, being an answer key. Information's on the left-hand side. We're going to populate that into the blue area on the right side. Last time, in the prior two presentations, we looked at putting together the financial statements, that including a balance sheet and an income statement using the data up top. This time, we're focusing in on a budget versus actual report. The data used to create the financial statements, the actual data, is up top. Down below, we've got the data, which is going to be the budgeted data that we'll use for our budget versus actual report. Now, when we think about a budget itself, that will typically be in the format or structure of the income statement because that's the performance statement that we have. So we're usually thinking income statement when we think of the budget. Let's go ahead first then and hide the balance sheet. I'm going to put my cursor on column C and then drag on over to column H, let go, right-click that selected area and hide those columns. And then we'll focus in over here on the budget and the income statement. So I'm going to start up top. I'm going to label this thing and put some labels up top. It's going to be the budget versus actual report, meaning I want to bring the budgeted numbers and the actual numbers. The actual numbers are on the income statement. The budgeted numbers are going to be on that data tab on the left-hand side. And then I'm going to give us the budget first column, and then I'll give a percent change in the income, which is common, which might help us to, well, we'll get into that in a second. Then I'm going to say the actual numbers, which is in essence the income statement on the left. And then we'll have the percent of income. And then we're going to have the difference, which you might call the variance. Difference, variance, change, that we can call it. So actual, this is budget versus actual. Okay, let's go ahead and select these and make a header tab on it by going to the Home tab, Font Group, black and white. And then these whatever, 5 of them I think there are, I want to center by going to the alignment and centering those items. All right, so now we're going to start off by just kind of copying the format to some degree of the income statement, although we'll vary it a little bit. So I'm going to say that this will be equal to the net income. And I'm just going to populate the numbers into the actual column. Notice I'm not going to be having these subcategories when I do this format because I want it all on one column so that I can easily do these comparisons between the columns. So it's a little bit harder to read than simply an income statement because we'll have to kind of figure everything out in one column. But it'll be easier for us to do our comparison in that format. So there's the 3,200. And then I'm going to pull the savings account information up top in our budget, assuming that we want that savings account stuff to be something that we pull up kind of like a fixed cost item, noting that it's not really an income statement item, but it's a cash flow item with regards to our cash flow kind of budget that we're putting together. Again, you can format your budget many different ways, and we will work on some other formats of the budget in future presentations to do as well. So we have a savings. I'm going to put our savings that are going to come out of our checking account into the savings where we had, and that on the income statement was down here where we had the savings, which was, I'll put the monthly savings and then the other savings. Let's put them in that format. And this is going to be equal to, not in that column. We got this column over here in the actual column. This is going to be equal to what we actually did, the 285, and then this is going to be equal to the 130. So there we have our savings numbers, and I'm going to call this then the total savings, and sum that up. I'm going to sum up the savings, just these two, equals the SUM, shift, not holding down shift up arrow, summing those two up. I'm going to put an underline here, Home tab alignment underline, So again, notice that because we don't have these sub-calculations, you might say, well, how much do I sum up, right? Just those two columns. It could be a little confusing, a little bit more confusing without the added columns, but not too bad. We can indicate it by the indentations here, so we can continue to do our indentations, which would be the home tab, alignment, indent, and then I'll indent this another time, home tab, alignment, and indent again. So then we're going to go to our fixed outflows, which I'm just going to pull in from our data on the left. So there's our fixed outflows, and we're going to pull in the rent. Let's say this is going to be the rent. I'm just going to put the same categories here, and I'm going to copy that down to get down to the car insurance. I'm going to put my cursor on the fill handle, drag it down 2 more cells, and then it just picks up those 2 other cells quite nicely. We can even take it down 1 more time for the total, dragging it down 1 more time to get the total, selecting these items, home tab, alignment, indent, and then we'll do that again, alignment and indent again. We can then put our numbers on the left side. This is going to be equal to the 420. We can copy that down, putting our cursor on the fill handle, dragging it down to get to the car insurance, underline the bottom number. We're going to go to the home tab, font group, underline, and then sum it up equals the SUM, shift 9, up arrow, holding down shift, up, and enter. So there's our 795. So then we got the variable. So I'm just going to pick up the variable cost. Similar thing. I'm going to try to group some of the variable costs a little bit differently. So, and just note, you could vary the grouping on it. I'm going to pick up the food, and we're going to pick up the shopping here in the same format. And then we've got the electric, water, and the cable. I'm just going to put those into utilities. Now again, this is a matter of preference to you as to whether you want to break them out or put them into a grouping of one category in terms of how much more detail do you think it's going to help you. If, for example, you think these are fairly standard, fairly fixed in nature, then it might not matter to break them out. If you think you have a lot of control over them and there's something that you want to focus in on, then you might break them out basically in more detail there. So I'm going to group those together just to show those separate groupings. And then we've got the auto, and then the entertainment, and then the total variable outflows we'll have here. Let's put that into our center column for the actuals. So we have the food equal to the 310. We have the shipping or the shopping, the 320, and then I'm going to sum these 3 cells up for the utilities equals the SUM, shift 9, left arrow. We're going to be picking up the electricity, holding down shift, down to the cable. Electricity down to the cable, and enter. So there we have that. It's going to come out to the 620. The auto is going to be equal to the 320, and then the entertainment equal to the 350, and I'm going to underline that by going to the font group and underline. Let's do some indentations. Selecting these cells, we're going to go to the alignment, we're going to indent, and then I'll indent the total down here, going to the alignment again and indenting again. We'll sum this up on the outer column equals the SUM, shift 9, up arrow, left arrow, holding down shift, up. I'm going to move this out of the way. So there we have it, and enter. So we're at the 1,920, which should match the same 1,920 over here, even though we did a different subcategory of the 620 utilities. And then let's underline that. We're going to go to the font group and underline. Actually, hold on a second. I put that in the outer column. I'm going to undo. I need to sum it up over here. We're not doing the subcategory in the outer column. Equals the SUM, shift 9, up arrow, summing it up in the same column. There we go. All right, and then we've got then the total expenses. So we've got the total expenses or outflows, which is going to be here, and I'm going to calculate that equal to. I'm going to be picking up then all of these. I'm going to say the 415 plus the 795 plus this item right there, the total variable. That's going to give us the 3130, which is slightly different than this number because remember I added these two down there. So if I was to highlight those three, we get the 3130, which is the 3130, and then we get the, I'm going to call it net cash flow, in essence, net income, which is going to be then equal to the income, which is all the way up top, and it's all in the same column here, so it's a little confusing, but just the income all the way up minus the total outflows, and that's going to give us our 70, which should match our bottom line number over here. Let's put some underlines on it. We're going to say the total cash outflow, put an underline there, and then this is coming from those three. Let's put an underline there. Okay, so that's our actual numbers, and now we'll just copy this over for the formatting for our budgeted numbers. To do that, let's hide our income statement. So I'm going to hide the income statement so we can see our data. Put in my cursor on column G, selecting on over to K, let go, right-click that selected area, and hide. And now we're going to look down below. It's a little bit of a stretch. We got to go down here and pick up the numbers from down below. So we got the gross income, the net income, and so on. So I'm going to put that in our budget column. This equals the gross income. Actually, I'm going to start with the net income. This equals the net income. And then we've got the monthly savings. The monthly savings, which is right there. And then we've got, this is going to be equal to the other savings. Actually, this was the other savings, and I got this one wrong. I missed the cell. This one should be the monthly savings, which is the 285. Okay, and then we've got the rent. The rent is going to be equal to the 420. We've got the credit card payments, which are going to be equal to the credit card payments. Where did those go? The credit card payments are there they are, 185. The car insurance is going to be then the 210. And then we can sum this up. Let's go and underline here. Underline underneath equals the SUM of these items. Let's sum this one up. Let's underline this one. And then sum it up equals the SUM of those two items. And continue on. Continuing on, we've got the food. Food is down here at the 290. And then we've got the shopping. The shopping, which was at the down here, the 185. And then we got the utilities, which I'm going to sum up again, because we put those three things together. So I hit the equals sum. We're picking up the electric, the water, and the cable. So I'm adding up the 220, the 180, and the 195. And that gives us to the 595. The auto, which I think we had down here as gas and maintenance, is the 240. And then we've got the entertainment, which I think I'm going to use this sum again, equals the sum, because I think there's two things for entertainment where we had the concerts and the movies. So I'm adding up the 250 and the 211 to give us the 461. Let's underline that by going to the font group underline. And then we'll sum it up, equals the SUM, shift 9, up arrow, holding down shift, and those items. So the total cash outflow is going to be equal then to the items up top, the savings, plus these outflows for the fixed, plus the one up above for the variable. That gives us the 3001. Finally, the net income, in essence, being the 32 minus that total outflow, the 3001. There we have it. Let's put an underline here and underline that one, and then underline this one. And so there we go. Now, oftentimes we want the difference here. So we'll talk about the difference, and then I'll come back to these percent changes items here. So let's pick up the difference, which would simply be the budgeted amount minus the actual amount. So I'm going to take that all the way down. This is going to be equal to the budget amount minus the actual. And so we have that. It's going to be the same. Now notice the fixed costs here. You might say nothing's going on here because the fixed costs, the things that we plan to be the same, should be the same. Meaning, if I plan to be putting in monthly savings 285 and have it taken out, for example, automatically or something like that, those numbers should be the same, you would think, because they're basically in essence fixed in nature. So I'm going to say, let's underline that. So we should be quite accurate. Now here, you could take the difference this way, of course, or you could take the difference and you might double check your numbers by summing up this way, which they're all zeros right now, but you could do that too, just to kind of double check. And then this is going to be the 420 minus the 420. You could copy that down, put in your cursor here. I'm going to copy it down to here because usually I like to sum up vertically here. So usually I'll then go font group underline and then sum up vertically this way. And then, but then you can also double check by saying, let's try to do it this way too. This minus that, I should get to the 20 either way. And then you could do it down here. We could say, all right, this is going to be equal to the 290 minus the 310. Now, the way we have this set up, the negative numbers are kind of, that means that the actual was more than the budget. So that's kind of bad, right? Because we're over the budget on the negative, and the positive means we're kind of did good in essence. We had a surplus. So we can copy that down. So there we have it. And then I could say, all right, that's going to be that. Let's underline it here. Font group underline. We could sum it up. Underline, didn't underline. Equals the SUM. I usually sum it up this way. And then you should be able to double check it by saying, let's take this number minus this number. We get to that same amount. And then the total cash outflows, I will typically do it this way first. It would be this number plus this number plus this number. That's the same calculation as we had here, or we could double check it by taking this minus this, and that should give us the same result. And then finally, the net income should be equal to the top number minus this number, or you can take this number, the 199 minus the 70, to kind of double check that. Let's go ahead and make these blue to fill them in as well. So I'm going to make this blue and put a bracket around it, include that as part of our table, put that here. I'm going to format paint it. You might already have this in your section. So there we have it, just to kind of double check. So there we have, and that of course, this is kind of what you would expect, right? The income, if we have wages income, if we're salaried, then the income might be somewhat the same. If we're not salaried, if we're hourly, then of course our income might go up and down from period to period. Then our savings, if we have our fixed savings, we would expect those to be the same, especially if they're drawn out of our income, automatically. And then the things that are going to be fixed, clearly we would expect to be the same. Rent is not going to change from period to period, so our budget should be pretty much right on for our rent. The credit card payment will depend if we're paying our credit card like on a standard set pattern, or if we have loan payments that we're saying that we're paying basically a set amount, or if we're going to be paying off, the amount that's going to be due. So that could be, something that could change from time to time. It's also another one of those areas where you have a deviation on your credit card from an accrual versus a cash basis, because you kind of want to track the liability that you have there, which is kind of an accrual type of thing. And then the car insurance, that's another thing that we're basically saying, hey, we expect that to be the same from month to month. Therefore, our budget's going to be right on, you would expect. And then these things, we have less control over it. So here, we budgeted to have the 290. We spent more on food. Now, note, again, these aren't directly correlated, but we have more control. And so we could, if we wanted to lower the food, that's one area we could do. Shopping, we would typically have more control over, so we can lower that. Utilities, we might not have too much control over utilities, but might some control over how much water we use and how much, air conditioning. The auto expense, again, we might not have too much control because we have necessities for it, but possibly some control. And then entertainment, you would think we'd have pretty sufficient control over that. And so we're actually under on that. And then you could take these tools and basically make your next budget, of course. Now, just note that it's also useful to kind of compare your expenses to the income, and this could also help you to plan your budget. So for example, the first one would just basically be your income compared to your income over income. We go to the number group, making that a percent. We're going to compare everything to income, because from a normal kind of perspective, income is usually considered to be our objective, right? Income generation. So if we compare everything to income, we can see how much we're spending relative to what we're earning from each line item. So this is quite common. So we'll take the 285 divided by the 3,200. We could say our savings, I'm going to go to the number group, add some decimals. I'm going to add a couple decimals here. Percentage, let's add a couple decimals to make it consistent. So we're saving almost 9% of our income. If I take the 130 divided by the savings, our other savings, number group, percent, decimals, is 4.06. This one you could calculate by taking the 415 divided by the total, making that a percent, adding decimals, or you can add up here, should also add up to that 1295. You can underline, font group, underline. Our rent, often quite high, especially if you're in like California or New York or something like that. We're going to divide that out. That'll be a percent, adding, so it's 13% of our income is for rent. We're going to say 185 divided by the 3,200, percent, couple decimals, and then we'll say this is going to be equal to the car insurance divided by the budget, and add a percent, couple decimals. This one, you could do it this way, the total divided by the budget, and then let's do that again, total. I have a spillover formula that I did on accident here. I don't want it to spill over. Don't spill. Makes a mess. Makes a mess when things, okay. So then I'm going to go to the font group, percent, add a couple, and then of course we can underline here, home font, and then add these up. That would be the 2547. So it should add up the same way. And then food, I'm going to do this the easy way this time. I'm going to take this number divided by this top number. This time I want this second number not to move down when I copy it down using an autofill. So I'm going to select F4 on the keyboard, $ before the N and 2. You only need a mixed reference, but absolute will work. I'm going to then make that a percent, add a couple decimals, grab that fill handle, drag it down. So there we have it there. If I double click on the last one, it looks like it's doing what we want. This one could be this number divided by the number up top. I'm going to add a percent, couple decimals, put an underline here, double check it, summing these up. We're at the 5534. Let's do this one. This is going to be equal to the cash outflow, this divided by the total. I'm going to add a percent, couple decimals, and then we're going to say this will be equal to the total divided by this one, and enter percent and then couple decimals. Now let's see if we could do that the easy way on the income side of things, and then you can compare the income items. So I'm just going to say this is going to be equal to this divided by itself. That second number, I'm going to make an absolute reference, F4, $ before the P and 2, and then I'm going to make it a percent, add decimals, and then just copy that all the way down. I'm just going to say autofill all the way down, and then I'll just go boom, there it is, and we can just add in the details. I don't need this 0 here, delete. I don't need that 0 here. Let's put an underline there, font group, underline. Need an underline here, underline. I could double check this number by saying that's 1297, looks good. These add up to 2484, looks good. Delete that number. These add up to 60, that looks right. Let's put an underline here, font group, underline, and then this one we can keep it there. So now you can do a comparison. Sometimes it's a little easier to compare your percent change numbers here from the budget versus the actual, and that can give you a better idea. It also gives you a sense of how much, the major categories. It can sometimes give you a better idea of how much you're spending in relation to your income on your big category line items.